Whispering Wikipedia. Today we are reading about the panda, and I'm so excited about it. Man, I really like pandas, and I'm so happy that someone requested me to read their Wikipedia page, because I've always wanted to do a full reading, and I want to learn more about them, because I know their cuteness, but I want to know more, and I want to get into some science behind the pandas. I've got a thirst for panda knowledge. Anyway, thank you to whoever suggested this. If you have anything you want me to read about on Wikipedia, please put it in the comments below. I read all of the comments, and I really like them, and it makes my day better. And I do try to respond to basically every single one. This series is based on viewer suggestions, so of course, leave me my next video in the comments. Now, without further ado, please remember that I cannot pronounce scientific names nor use scientific terminology. Welcome to this whispering Wikipedia reading of the panda. The giant panda, Eurypoda melancholusa. In Chinese, it's pinyin Daxing, also known as the panda bear, or simply the panda, is a bear native to south central China. It is characterized by large black patches around its eyes, over the ears, and across its round body. The name giant panda is sometimes used to distinguish it from the red panda, a neighbouring mustaloid. Though it belongs to the order Carnivora, the giant panda is a foliivore, with bamboo shoots and leaves making more than 99% of its diet. That's quite interesting. It's part of the family Carnivora, but it ain't. Or is it really? Giant pandas in the wild will occasionally eat other grasses, wild tubers, or even meat, in the form of birds, rodents, or carrion. In captivity, they may receive honey, eggs, fish, yams, shrub leaves, oranges, or bananas, along with specially prepared food. Interesting. The giant panda lives in a few mountain ranges in central China, mainly in Sichuan, but also in the neighbouring Shanxi and Gansu. As a result of farming, deforestation, and other development, the giant panda has been driven out of the lowland areas where it once lived, and it is a conservation-reliant, vulnerable species. A 2007 report showed 239 pandas living in captivity inside China and another 27 outside this country. As of December 2014, 49 pandas live in captivity outside of China, living in 18 zoos in 13 different countries. Wild population estimates vary. One estimate shows that there are about 1,590 individuals living in the wild, while a 2006 study via DNA analysis estimated that this figure could be as high as 2,000 or 3,000. Some reports also show that the number of giant pandas in the wild is on the rise. Hopefully. In March 2015, conservation news sites in Mongabay stated that the wild giant panda population has increased by 268 or 16.8% to 1,864 in In 16, the IUCN classified the species from endangered to vulnerable, affirming decade-long efforts to save the panda. While the dragon has often served as China's national symbol, internationally the giant panda has often filled this role. As such, it is becoming widely used within China in international contexts, for example, appearing since 1982 on gold panda bullion coins as one of the 5 Fua mascots of the Beijing Olympics. Moving on to the taxonomy classification. For many decades, the precise taxonomy classification of the giant panda was under debate, because it shares characteristics with both bears and raccoons. However, molecular studies indicate that the giant panda is a true bear, part of the family Ursidae. These studies show it diverged about 19 million years ago from the common ancestor of the Ursidae. It is the most basal member of this family and equidistant from all other extant bear species. The giant panda has been referred to as a living fossil. Wow, that's quite interesting. On to etymology. The word panda was borrowed into English from French, but no conclusive explanation of the origin of the French word panda has been found. The closest candidate is the Nepali word ponya, possibly referring to the adapted wrist bone of the red panda, which is native to Nepal. The Western world originally applied this name to the red panda. In many other sources, the name panda or common panda refers to the lesser-known red panda, thus necessitating the inclusion of giant and lesser/red prefaces in front of the names. Even in 2013, the Encyclopedia Britannica still used giant panda or panda bear for the bear, and simply panda for the red panda, despite the popular usage of the word panda to refer to giant pandas. Since the earliest collection of Chinese writings, the Chinese language has given the bear 20 different names, such as Huizong, the spotted bear, and Zhuzong, the bamboo bear. The most popular names in China today are Dangxingmao, giant bear cat, or simply Xiangmao, bear cat. The name Xiangmao, bear cat, was originally used to describe the red panda Ailurus fulgens, but since the giant panda was thought to be closely related to the red panda, Jiangmiao was named relatively. In Taiwan, another popular name for panda is the inverted Damazoing, the giant cat bear, though many encyclopedia and dictionaries in Taiwan still use the bear cat form as the correct name. Some linguists argue in this construction bear instead of cat is the base noun, making this name more grammatically and logically correct, which may have led to the popular choice despite official writings. This name did not gain its popularity until 1988, when a private zoo in Tainan painted a sun bear black and white and created the Tainan fake panda incident. I wonder what that is. Now to subspecies. 2 subspecies of the giant panda have been recognized on the basis of distinct cranial measurements, color patterns, and population genetics. The nominate subspecies A. m. melanoslusa consists of most extant populations of the giant panda. These animals are principally found in Sichuan and displayed the typical stark black and white contrasting colors. The Qingling has larger molars. A detailed study of the giant panda's genetic history from 2012 confirms that the separation of the Quinlan population occurred about 300,000 years ago, and reveals that the non-Quinlan population further diverged into two groups, named the Minshan and the Qinglonggang, Daxi Langling, Xiao Zhangling, Liangshan group, respectively, about 2,800 years ago. Man, I wish I could speak Chinese because it sounds so cool. The giant panda has luxuriant black and white fur. Adults measure about 1.2 to 1.9 meters, which is 3 feet 11 inches to 6 feet 3 inches long, including a tail of about 10 to 15 centimeters, which is 4 to 6 inches, and 60 to 90 centimeters, which is 24 to 35 inches tall at the shoulder. Males can weigh up to 160 kilograms, which is 350 pounds, and females, generally 10 to 20% smaller than male, can weigh as little as 70 kilograms, which is 150 pounds, but can also weigh up to 125 kilograms, 276 pounds. Average adult weight is 100 to 115 kilograms, which is 220 to 254 pounds. The giant panda has a body shape typical of bears. It has the black fur on its ears, eyes, patches, muzzle, legs, arms, and shoulders. The rest of the animal's coat is white. Although scientists do not know why these unusual bears are black and white, speculation suggests that the bold colouring provides effective camouflage in their shape, dapply, snowy, and rocky habitat. The giant panda's thick, woolly coat keeps it warm in the cool forests of its habitat. The panda's skull shape is typical of Durophagous carnivorans. It has evolved from previous ancestors to exhibit a larger molars with increased complexity and expanded temporal fossa. A 110.45 kilogram, 245 pound giant panda has a 3D canine teeth bite force of 2,603. That's like double the German Shepherd that we looked at the other day. Newtons, and a bite force quotient of 292. Another study had a 117 kilogram, 259 pound giant panda bite of 1,298.9 newtons at canine teeth and 1,815 newtons at carnassial teeth. The giant panda's paw has a thumb and 5 fingers. The thumb, actually a modified sesamoid bone, helps it hold bamboo while eating. Stephen Jay Gould discusses this feature in his books of essays on evolution and biology, The Panda's Thumb. The giant panda's tail measures 10 to 15 centimeters, which is 4 to 6 inches, and is the second longest in the bear family. The longest belongs to the sloth bear. The giant panda typically lives around 20 years in the wild and up to 30 years in captivity. A female named Gia was the oldest giant panda ever in captivity, born in 1978 and died at the age of 38 on the 16th of October 2016. On to Pathology. In a zoo in Zhenzhou, China, after showing symptoms of gastroenteritis and respiratory It was found that the cause of death was toxoplasmosis, a disease caused by Toxoplasma gondii and infecting most warm-blooded animals, including humans. Onto genomics. The giant panda genome was sequenced in 2009 using Illumina dye sequencing. Its genome contains 20 pairs of autosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. Onto ecology. Despite its taxonomic classification as a carnivoran, the giant panda's diet is primarily herbivorous, consisting almost exclusively of bamboo. However, the giant panda still has the digestive system of a carnivore, as well as carnivore-specific genes, and thus derives little energy and little protein from consumption of bamboo. Its ability to digest cellulose is ascribed to the microbes in its gut. Pandas are born with sterile intestines and require bacteria obtained from the mother's feces to digest vegetation. The giant panda is a highly specialized animal with unique adaptations and has lived in bamboo forests for millions of years. The average giant panda eats as much as 9 to 14 kilograms, which is 20 to 30 pounds, of bamboo shoots a day to compensate for the limited energy content of its diet. Ingestion of such a large quantity of material is possible and necessary because of the rapid passage of large amounts of indigestible plant material through the short, straight digestive tract. It is also noted, however, that such rapid passages of digester limits the potential of microbial digestion in the gastrointestinal tract, limiting alternative forms of digestion. Given this voluminous diet, the giant panda defecates up to 40 times a day. The limited energy input imposed on it by its diet has affected the panda's behavior. The giant panda tends to limit its social interactions and avoids steeply sloping terrain to limit its energy expenditures. Two of the panda's most distinctive features, its large size and round face, are adaptations to its bamboo diet. Anthropologist Russell Kekon observed, much like the vegetarian gorilla, the low body surface area to the body volume of the giant panda is indicative of a lower metabolic rate. This lower metabolic rate and a more sedentary lifestyle allows the giant panda to subsist on nutrient-poor resources such as bamboo. Similarly, the giant panda's round face is the result of powerful jaw muscles, which attach from the top of its head to the jaw. Large molars crush and grind fibrous plant material. The morphological characteristics of extinct relatives of the giant panda suggest that while the ancient giant panda was omnivorous 7 million years ago, MYA, it only became herbivorous some 2 to 2.4 million years ago with the emergence of A. microta. Genome sequencing of the giant panda suggests that the dietary switch could have initiated from the loss of the sole T1/R1/T1R3 umami taste receptor, resulting from the two frameshift mutations within the T1R1 exons. Umami taste corresponds to high levels of glutamate as found in meat, and may have thus altered the food choice of the giant panda, although the pseudogenisation of the umami taste receptor in Ailuropoda coincides with the dietary switch to herbivory. It is likely a result of, and not the reason for, dates bamboo consumption in the giant panda species at least 7 million years ago. Interesting. Significantly that although complete herbivory occurred around 2 million years ago, the dietary switch was initiated prior to the T1R1 loss of function. Interesting. Pandas eat any of the 25 bamboo species in the wild, such as Fargesia dracocephala and Fargesia rufa. Only a few bamboo species are widespread at the high altitudes pandas now inhabit. Bamboo leaves contain the highest protein levels. Stems have less. Because of the synchronous flowering, death and regeneration of all bamboo within a species, the giant panda must have at least 2 different species available in its range to avoid starvation. While primarily herbivorous, the giant panda still retains decidedly ursine teeth and will eat meat, fish and eggs when available. In captivity, zoos typically maintain the giant panda's bamboo diet, though some will provide specially formulated biscuits or other dietary supplements. Pandas will travel between different habitats if they need to, so they can get nutrients that they need and to balance their diet for reproduction. For 6 years, scientists studied 6 pandas tagged with GPS collars at the Pharping Reserve in the Qingling Mountains. They took note of their foraging and mating habits and analysed samples of their food and feces. The pandas would move from the valleys into the Qingling Mountains and would only return to the valleys in autumn. During the summer months, bamboo shoots rich in protein are only available at higher altitudes, which causes low calcium rates in the pandas, and during breeding season the pandas would trek back down to eat bamboo leaves rich in calcium. Predators. Although adult giant pandas have few natural predators other than humans, young cubs are vulnerable to attacks by snow leopards, yellow-throated martens, eagles, feral dogs, and the Asian black bear. Sub-adults, weighing up to 50 kilograms, 110 pounds, may be vulnerable to predation by leopards. Interesting. Now we get to move on to behavior. The giant panda is a terrestrial animal and primarily spends its life roaming and feeding in the bamboo forests of the Qingling Mountains and in the hilly province of Sichuan. Giant pandas are generally solitary. Each adult has a defined territory and a female is not tolerant of other females in her range. Social encounters occur primarily during the brief breeding season in which pandas in proximity to one another will gather. After mating, the male leaves the female alone to raise the cub. Pandas were thought to fall into the crepuscular category, those who are active twice a day at dawn and dusk. However, Jing Dongsang found that pandas may belong to a category all of their own, with activity peaks in the morning, afternoon and midnight. Due to their sheer size, they can be active at any time of the day. Activity is highest in June and decreases in late summer to fall, with an increase from November through the following March. Activity is also directly related to the amount of sunlight during colder days. Pandas communicate through vocalization and scent marking such as clawing trees or spraying urine. They are able to climb and take shelter in hollow trees or rock crevices, but do not establish permanent dens. For this reason, pandas do not hibernate, which is similar to other subtropical mammals, and will instead move to elevations with warmer temperatures. Pandas rely primarily on spatial memory rather than visual memory, is often assumed to be docile and has been known to attack humans, presumably out of irritation rather than aggression. Moving to reproduction. Initially, the primary method of breeding giant pandas in captivity was by artificial insemination, as they seemed to lose their interest in mating once they were captured. This led to some scientists to try extreme methods, such as showing them videos of giant pandas mating and giving the males sildenafil, which is commonly known as Viagra. Only recently have researchers started having success with captive breeding programs, and they have now determined giant pandas having comparable breeding to some populations of the American black bear, a thriving bear species. The normal reproductive rate is considered to be one young every 2 years. Giant pandas reach sexual maturity between the ages of 4 and 8 and may be reproductive until age 20. The mating season is between March and May, when a female goes into estrus, which lasts for 2 or 3 days and only occurs once a year. When mating, the female is in a crouching head-down position as the male mounts her from behind. Copulation time is short, ranging from 30 seconds to 5 minutes, but the male may mount her repeatedly to ensure successful fertilization. The gestation period ranges from 95 to 160 days. Giant pandas give birth to twins in about half of the pregnancies. If twins are born, usually only one survives in the wild. The mother will select the stronger of the cubs and the weaker cub will die due to starvation. The mother is thought to be unable to produce enough milk for 2 cubs since she does not store fat. The father has no part in helping raise the cub. When the cub is the firstborn, it is pink, blind and toothless, weighing only 90 to 130 grams, or about 1/800th of the mother's weight, proportionally the smallest baby of any placental mammal. It nurses from its mother's breast 6 to 14 times a day, for up to 30 minutes at a time. For 3 to 4 hours the mother may leave the den to feed, which leaves the cub defenseless. 1 to 2 weeks after birth, the cub's skin turns grey, where its hair will eventually become black. Slight pink colour may appear on the cub's fur as a result of a chemical reaction between the fur and its mother's saliva. A month after birth, the colour pattern of the cub's fur is fully developed. Its fur is very soft and coarsens with age. The cub begins to crawl at 75 to 80 days. Mothers play with their cubs by rolling and wrestling with them. The cubs can eat small quantities of bamboo after 6 months, though mother's milk remains the primary food source for most of the first year. Giant panda cubs weigh 45 kilograms, which is 100 pounds, at 1 year, and live with their mothers until they are 18 months to 2 years old. The interval between births in the wild is generally 2 years. In July of 2009, Chinese scientists confirmed the birth of the first cub to be successfully conceived through artificial insemination using frozen sperm. The cub was born at 7:41 on the 23rd of July that year in Sichuan as the 3rd cub of Yu, an 11-year-old. The technique for freezing the sperm in liquid nitrogen was first developed in 1980, and the first birth was hailed as a solution to the dwindling availability of giant panda semen, which has led to inbreeding. Panda semen, which can be frozen for decades, in the United States and Mexico City will now be able to provide their own semen to inseminate more giant pandas. Wow, that's crazy. In August of 2014, a rare birth of panda triplets was announced in China. It was the fourth of such births ever reported. Attempts have also been made to reproduce giant pandas by interspecific pregnancy by implanting clone panda embryos into the uterus of an animal of another species. This has resulted in panda fetuses, but no live births. Now on to uses and human interaction. Early references. In the past, pandas were thought to be rare and noble creatures. The Empress Dowager was buried with a panda skull in her vault. The grandson of Emperor Taizong of Tang is said to have given Japan 2 pandas and a sheet of panda skin as a sign of goodwill. Unlike many other animals in ancient China, pandas were rarely thought to have medical uses. The few known uses include the Sichuan tribal pieces' use of panda urine to melt anecdotally swallowed needles, and the use of panda pelts to control menses as described in the Qin Dynasty Encyclopedia area. The creature named Mo, mentioned in some ancient books, has been interpreted as giant panda. The dictionary Shaowenzi, Eastern Han Dynasty, says that Mo from Shu, Sichuan, is bear-like but yellow and black, although the older area describes Mo simply as a white leopard. The interpretation of the legendary fierce creature Pig Xiao as referred to the giant panda is also common. During the reign of the Yongli Emperor, early 15th century, his relative from Kaifeng sent him a captured Zoyu, and another Zoyu was sighted in Shandong. Zoyu is a legendary righteous animal which, similarly to a Quilin, only appears during the rule of a benevolent and sincere monarch. It is said to be as fierce as a tiger, but still gentle and strictly vegetarian, and described in some books as a white tiger with black spots. Puzzled about the real zoological identity of the creature captured during the Yongli era, J.J.L. Duvendiak exclaimed, "Can it possibly have been a panda?" The comparative obscurity of the giant panda throughout most of China's history is illustrated by the fact that, despite there being a number of depictions of bears in Chinese art starting from its most ancient times, and the bamboo being one of the favourite subjects for Chinese painters, there are no known pre-20th century artistic representations of giant pandas. Western discovery. The West first learned of the giant panda on the 11th of March 1869 when a French missionary, Armand David, received a skin from a hunter. The first Westerner known to have seen a living giant panda is the German zoologist Hugo Wiegold, who purchased a cub in 1916. That's actually fairly late when you think about it. Kermit and Theodore Roosevelt Jr. became the first Westerners to shoot a panda. On an expedition funded by the Field Museum of Natural History in the 1920s. In 1936, Ruth Harkness became the first Westerner to bring back a live giant panda, a cub named Sulin, which went to live at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. In 1938, Floyd Tangier Smith captured and delivered 5 giant pandas to London. They arrived on the 23rd of September aboard the SS Antenna. These 5 were the first on British soil and were transferred to the London Zoo. One, named Grandma, only lasted a few days. She was taxidermied by E. Gerard and Sons and sold to Leeds City Museum, where she is currently on display to the public. Another, Ming, became London Zoo's first giant panda. Her skull is held by the Royal College of Surgeons of England. Now on to Panda Diplomacy. Gifts of pandas to American and Japanese zoos formed an important part of the diplomacy of the People's Republic of China, PRC, in the 1970s, as it marked some of the first cultural exchanges between China and the West. This practice has been termed panda diplomacy. By 1984, however, pandas were no longer given as gifts. Instead, China began to offer pandas to other nations only on 10-year loans, under terms including a fee of up to $1 million per year, and a provision that any cubs born since during the loan are the property of China. Since 1998, because of a WWF lawsuit, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service only allows a US zoo to import a panda if the zoo can ensure that China will channel more than half of its loan fee into conservation efforts of the giant panda and its habitat. Interesting. In May of 2005, China offered a breeding pair to Taiwan. The issue became embroiled in cross-strait relations, both over the underlying symbolism and over technical issues such as whether the transfer would be considered domestic or international, or whether any true conservation purpose would be served by the exchange. A contest in 2006 to name the pandas was held in the mainlands, resulting in the politically charged names Chuan Chuan and Yuan Yuan, from Chuan Yuan meaning reunion, i.e. reunification. Wow, that is so controversial. China's offer was initially rejected by Shen Shuiban, the president of Taiwan. However, when Ma Ying-jeou assumed the presidency in 2008, the offer was accepted and the pandas arrived in December of that year. On to biofuel. Microbes in pandas' waste are being investigated for their use in creating biofuels from bamboo and other plant materials. Interesting. On to now conservation. The giant panda is a vulnerable species threatened by continued habitat loss and habitat fragmentation, and by a very low birth rate, both in the wild and in captivity. Its range is currently confined to a small portion on the western edge of its historical range, which stretched through southern and eastern China, northern Myanmar, and northern Vietnam. The giant panda has been a target of poaching by locals since ancient times and by foreigners since it was introduced to the West. Starting in the 1930s, foreigners were unable to poach giant pandas in China because of the Second Sino-Japanese War and the Chinese Civil War, but pandas remained a source of soft furs to the locals. The population boom in China after 1949 created stress on the panda's habitat, and the subsequent famines led to the increased hunting of wildlife, including pandas. During the Cultural Revolution, all studies and conservation activities on the pandas were stopped, and the Chinese economic reform, demand for panda skins from Hong Kong and Japan led to illegal poaching from the black market, acts generally ignored by the local officials at the time. Naughty naughty. In 1963, the PRC government set up the Wulong National Nature Reserve to save the declining panda population. However, few advances in the conservation of panda were made at the time owing to inexperience and insufficient knowledge of ecology. Many believe the best way to save the pandas was to cage them. As a result, the pandas were caged at any sign of decline and suffered from terrible conditions. destruction of their natural habitat, along with segregation caused by caging, reproduction of wild pandas was severely limited. In the 1990s, however, several laws, including gun control and the removal of resident humans from the reserves, helped the chances of survival. With these renewed efforts and improved conservation methods, wild pandas have started to increase in numbers in some areas, though they are still classified as a rare species. In 2006, scientists reported that the number of pandas living in the wild may have been underestimated at about 1,000. Previous population surveys had used conventional methods to estimate the size of the wild panda population, but using a new method that analyzes DNA from panda droppings, scientists believe the wild population may be as large as 3,000. In 2006, there were 30 panda reserves in China, compared to just 13 reserves in 1998, as the species has been reclassified to vulnerable since 2016. The conservation efforts are thought to be working. Furthermore, in response to this reclassification, the State Forestry Administration of China announced that they would not accordingly lower the conservation level for panda, and would instead reinforce the conservation efforts. The giant panda is among the world's most adored and protected rare animals, and is one of the few in the world whose natural inhabitant status was able to gain a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation. The Sichuan giant panda sanctuary is located in southwest province of Sichuan, and covering 7 natural reserves were inscribed onto the World Heritage List in 2006. Not all conservationists agree that the money spent on conserving pandas is well spent. Chris Packham has argued that the breeding of pandas in captivity is pointless because there is not enough habitat left to sustain them. Chris Packham has argued that the breeding of pandas in captivity is pointless because there is not enough habitat left to sustain them. Packham argues that the money spent on pandas would be better spent elsewhere. And he said he would eat the last panda if I could have all the money we have spent on panda conservation put back on the table for me to do more sensible things with. Though he has apologized for upsetting people who like pandas. He said, the panda is possibly one of the grossest wastes of conservation money in the last half-century. However, a 2015 paper found that the giant panda can serve as an umbrella species, as the preservation of their habitat also helps other endemic species in China, including 70% of the mammals and 31% of the amphibians. In 2012, Earthwatch Institute, a global non-profit that teams volunteers with scientists to conduct important environmental research, launched a program called On the Trail of the Giant Panda. This program, based in the Wulong National Nature Reserve, allows volunteers to work up close with pandas cared for in captivity and help them adapt to life in the wild, so that they may breed and live longer and healthier lives. Efforts to preserve the panda bear populations in China have come at the expense of other animals in the region. 2006 New York Times article outlined the economics of keeping pandas, which costs 5 times more than keeping the next most expensive animal, an elephant. American zoos generally pay the Chinese government $1 million a year in fees as part of a typical 10-year contract. San Diego's contract with China was about to expire in 2008, but got a 5-year extension at about half of the previous yearly cost. The last contract with the Memphis Zoo in Memphis, Tennessee ended in 2013. And very lastly, a reference in medicine. The face of the giant panda sign is an MRI sign in the patients with Wilson's disease, named